Most people experience something, move on, experience something else, move on again, and you probably didn't take enough time to actually look back and realize what just happened. You might fail at something, get annoyed about it for a little while, and then try again. You might even succeed at something and think, well, that's worked, let's keep going. But I think there's a massive problem there, because experience by itself doesn't necessarily make you better. You could make the same mistake 10 times and have 10 experiences of failure without actually learning anything from it. I think reviewed experience is what actually makes you better. Taking the time to look backwards, pull something apart, figure out exactly what happened, and then take those lessons forward with you. I want to try and break it all down so we can actually do better in the future. One of the greatest tools that the military gave me for doing this was incredibly simple: an AAR, or an after-action review. After an exercise, operation, training activity, or whatever it may be, you don't simply pack everything away and forget about it. You conduct an AAR. What happened, what worked, what didn't work, what do we actually need to fix, and what do we need to improve on? And perhaps importantly, what do we need to sustain because it actually worked really well? Then you take those lessons and hopefully the next time you conduct the activity, you're a little bit better. I think that's such a simple tool that you can take outside of the military and apply to almost every area of your life. Your business, training, finances, relationships, whatever it may be. Instead of allowing experiences to simply happen to you, you can extract something useful from them. Normally an AAR can be conducted in a group setting. You might have someone senior guiding the conversation, somebody acting as a scribe and recording the important information. And then everyone involved has the opportunity to provide the input. There should be an outline of what's actually being discussed, limitations around irrelevant information, and someone keeping the conversation moving so you don't spend half an hour going down some random tangent that has nothing to do with the task at hand. It sounds pretty formal when I explain it like that, but the underlying idea is incredibly simple. Point is, you don't need a group environment to do this. You can conduct an AAR entirely on yourself. This is when it becomes one of the most powerful tools for self-accountability, because eventually you need to become capable of reviewing your own actions without somebody standing over your shoulder and telling you what you did wrong. You need to be able to look at your own life, your own work, your training, your business, faith, whatever it may be, and ask yourself some pretty simple questions. What was I trying to accomplish? What actually happened? What worked? What didn't? And what am I going to do differently next time? That's basically it. You can make it as detailed as you want, but I think the simplicity is what makes it so useful. The way I learned to think about it was through fixes, improves, and sustains, relevant to whatever activity has been conducted. A fix is something that went wrong and needs correcting. An improve is something that might have worked but could definitely be done better. And a sustain is something that worked well and should continue being done. I think that last one is especially important because when people hear something like auditing yourself, they immediately think about finding everything you're doing wrong. You sit down with the journal and suddenly it becomes a list of every failure you've had that week. But that's not the point. You need to identify the good things as well. If something worked really well, why did it work? Was it your preparation? Was it something you did differently? Was there a particular habit that helped? Whatever it may be, recognize it and sustain it. Because sometimes we accidentally stumble into success and never actually figure out why. And on the opposite side, sometimes we fail and immediately throw the entire idea away when maybe one small part needed to be changed. And that's why it's so useful. You're trying to strip the emotion and ego away for a moment and actually look at what happened. If something was your fault, say it. If something worked because you got lucky rather than because you prepared properly, recognize that too. If something completely outside your control ruined the results, you can acknowledge that without somehow blaming yourself for the entire thing. You're just trying to get an accurate picture, and I think conducting one of these by yourself is harder in some ways because there's nobody else in the room to call you out on your lies. You can lie to yourself really easily. You can say, I didn't have enough time. Okay, did you actually not have enough time? Or did you spend an entire hour scrolling on your phone? You say, I had a terrible training session. Why? Did you sleep properly? Did you eat properly? Did you recover? Was the programming wrong? Or were you simply having a bad day? Because sometimes that's the answer as well. It's not about finding a way to blame yourself for absolutely everything. Some things aren't within your control and you can just accept it. It's about identifying what was within your control and then actually doing something about it. I think that's where self-accountability becomes really important. When you're in the military, there's external accountability practically everywhere. You've got timings, you've got standards, you've got people above you, beside you, people relying on you. If you're supposed to be somewhere at a certain time and you aren't there, somebody is probably going to notice pretty quickly. If your equipment isn't prepared or you haven't done something where you were supposed to do, somebody is going to find out and beast you on it. When you remove that environment, nobody necessarily cares. Nobody knows that you said you were going to train this morning and then decided not to. Nobody knows that you were going to read 10 pages tonight and then instead sat on your phone. Nobody knows that you want to spend more time in prayer but keep saying, I'll do it later. And that's a strange type of freedom because suddenly you can make excuses and there might be nobody around to challenge you on them. So you need to learn to challenge yourself. You need to become capable of saying, no, I said I was going to do this and I didn't. Why? Not so you can sit there and hate yourself for it. Not so you can sit there guilty for 3 hours and accomplish nothing. You're looking for the lesson. I think people get this a little bit wrong when reflecting on failure. There's a massive difference between reflection and rumination. You don't need to sit there replaying the same mistake over and over again. You don't need to define yourself by it. You're trying to extract the useful information from what happened and then keep moving forward. The idea fits into so many different parts of my life now. Advertising is probably one of the cleanest examples for my business. You can run several different ads and some of them will just lose you money. It sucks, but they're giving you information. Then there might be another ad that starts producing 3 or 4 times what you're putting into it. So now you look at the difference. Was it the hook, the image, the copy, the offer, putting it to a different audience? What did this one do differently and how can I improve upon it in the future? You sustain what worked, improve what could be better, and fix what clearly didn't work. And then you go again. I'm doing the same with YouTube now. Every video that doesn't work, every title, thumbnail, whatever it may be, I look at the fixes, the sustains and improvements and keep working at it. And funnily enough, this video itself will get its own AAR trying to figure out what worked, what didn't, and what you guys responded to and what I can carry forward into the next one. That's why I love this framework. It can be applied to practically anything in your life because it's really just structured reflection. You can sit down once a week and conduct it for the whole week. It could be exercise or activity based, or you could have a friend to break it all down with and have some reflection with them. There are so many ways to take this, but you just need to see what works for yourself. You don't need a complicated system, just grab a journal, write the headings down and be honest with yourself. I would promote writing it down a lot of the time because then you can come back on it later and see whether you actually fixed it. If every week you write, I spent too much time on my phone, and 6 weeks later you're still writing, I spent too much time on my phone, then clearly the AAR isn't the problem anymore. You know the problem, now you just actually need to do something about it. And remember, whatever the solution is, the reflection has to eventually become action. Otherwise, you're just documenting failures. I think this can go beyond productivity and into something deeper, especially with my faith. I'm not saying you need to sit down and conduct some tactical military AAR on your relationship with God, but I do think honest self-examination is incredibly important. Where did I fall short this week? Where did I fall into the same temptation again? What led me towards it? And if you keep falling into the same thing, perhaps there's something there that needs changing. Again, it isn't about beating yourself up. We all fail, we all sin, we all fall short. But if you're willing to actually look at what happened, repent where you need to repent, learn from it and make changes, then even the failure can push you towards becoming better. I think that's where the whole idea comes from. Experience alone doesn't necessarily make you better. You could spend 10 years doing something incorrectly and technically have 10 years of experience. It's the review afterwards that starts turning those experiences into lessons, and then actually applying those lessons is what turns them into progress. So if you wanted to conduct one yourself, I'd keep it incredibly simple. Mission, what was I trying to accomplish? Reality, what actually happened? Sustains, what worked that I should continue doing? Improves, what worked but could be done better? Fixes, what clearly needs correcting? And finally, action. What exactly am I going to do differently the next time? That's it. Life's going to give you wins and failures regardless. You're going to make good decisions and terrible ones. Things will go perfectly and other things will completely fall apart. But you don't have to waste any of those experiences. Look backwards without becoming stuck backwards. Take the lessons, sustain what worked, improve what could have been better, and fix what needs fixing. And then actually apply it for the next attempt. Because eventually one of the greatest forms of accountability is reaching the point where nobody needs to tell you what went wrong. You're willing to sit down, be completely truthful with yourself, identify it, and actually do something about it. Remember, keep moving forward. I'm Jaden Conley, and thank you for watching.